So financial freedom is the ability to choose how you spend your time without having to earn a living. And I think time is the most precious resource that we have as human beings. And we live in a society that really dictates that we have to spend the majority of that time that we have on Earth working. And that really what we want as human beings is to be free to spend our time doing what's important to us. So when I'm working with mentoring clients and at the beginning of the book, I talk about what you getting clear, what does financial freedom mean to you? I share a bit what it means to me. It means on a practical level, it's simple things like being able to pick my kids up from school and spend quality time with my kids. Although they're at an age now where they don't actually seem to want to spend quality time with me. So that's kind of ironic. It means being able to play golf during the week because it gets really crowded on the weekends. It also means being able to take out a year and write a book and do something that I feel is making a difference. And that's what I'm hoping to do with the work that I do, is actually really make a difference to small business owners. I'll tell you another story about financial independence, because while I do, after this, I'm going to ask that when you leave here today that you think about what financial independence means to you, because it can be a very powerful motivator for the rest of my sort of formula for business. So I'm going to tell you a story about my father. I talk a lot about my dad in the book. He has been a great inspiration to me. He died 8 years ago. He died at the age 73, which I think is too early these days. I think most of us sort of hope we're going to live at least into our 80s. But he has had a business. He had one business in his life, and he sold it in his early 50s. He made a lot of money, and he never worked again. So when he died, he'd had a good 20 years of financial freedom. And so I think, that's another part of the gift, is that he didn't work all the way up to the end. There are a number of stories about my dad and his business, but there was one told at his funeral, which really, to me, summed up one of the ways you can look at financial independence. And one of his best friends got up to give his eulogy at the funeral. And he said, "I only just heard this story about Les this morning from Liz, who's my mum, and I thought I'd share it because it really sums up, who Les was." And he said, story goes like this. Les was at home one day on her own. Les was out, and the phone rang. And an old man was on the phone. And he said to Liz, is Mr. Humphreys home? And she said, "No, sorry, he's not home." And he said, "I'll take a message." And he said, "Okay, well, I just wanted to ring and thank Mr. Humphreys for his generous donation." And she said, "All right, I'll pass that message on." My dad comes home and Mum says, this old man rang, and it was the War Veterans Association that he'd rung from. And he just wanted to thank you for your generous donation. And Dad said, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And she said, "Well, what donation was this?" And my dad said, the Veterans Association were advertising in the newspaper, trying to raise funds to take a whole bunch of them to Normandy to go and commemorate the loss of life during the war. And she said, he said, "So I rang them and I asked them how much do they need." And my mum said, "Oh, how much did they need?" And my dad said, £10,000. And my mum said, "Well, how much did you give them?" And my dad said, £10,000. And she said, "Why on earth would you give them so much money?" And he said, "For all they've done for our country, they shouldn't have to beg." And to me, it sort of chokes me up now even thinking about that, that to me sums up financial independence, is that the ability to write a cheque for £10,000 because you can, because it's the right thing to do. And also not telling anybody. He wasn't going to tell anyone. If that old man hadn't rung up and my mum had gotten into the picture, no one would ever have known. So when you leave here, think about what it is for you. What would financial independence mean to you? What does it mean to you to not have to work for a living, to your life and how you live your life and how you share and how you give to others?